Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video number 275. Free thought and expression are of spiritual importance when we're talking from the occult perspective that I happen to agree with. If you are practicing the occult, looking at magic and so forth, one of the things you'll have to do, like some people think you buy a cauldron and a wand and you say magic words and you have a grimoire or something. You can do that, it's kind of LARPy, it can be fun, and you can have black cat stencils on your wall, and the crystal ball glowing in the corner, and herbs hanging around. And having a lot of herbs hanging around, just to be clear, is nice and comfy. I like Wiccan interior design, like cottagecore goth or something. Yeah, that can definitely work, but it's about more than that. There's actually a meme about occultists, and it's like, one of those memes like what my mom thinks I do, what my dad thinks I do, what my friends think I do, and then at the end what you really do with the occult is you got someone, they're confused, and they got stacks of books behind them, they're studying charts and stuff. Now, while I wouldn't go into necessarily that side of it, like the higher ritual Renaissance magic thing, and burden myself with ephemera of various kinds and charts of lunar calculations and stuff, you will read a lot. It's very difficult to be a proper occultist unless you like two things: reading things, in the sense of actual literature, and the scientific side of things. You have to have an understanding and appreciation for biological and chemical science. There aren't any ignorant occultists, at least as far as those that have any talent whatsoever. That includes the charlatans, by the way. You got to have a lot of smarts and a lot of charisma to be able to sell total bullshit to people that looks authentic but totally isn't, and anyone with half a working goddamn neuron would know that. I can think of some names, but I won't name them at the moment. I've read thousands of books over the last half decade and edited several hundred of them. It's a lot of work. Therefore, any particular political persuasion, ideology, government, societal movement that wants to burn books would be directly anathema to the occult. That's where all of your greatest lore is stored. And by the way, there's a counterpart to that, and I actually wrote about this briefly at the beginning of Fruits of Eden, which I will be re-editing soon. I'm finishing up 2 more compilational works. One is almost done. The next one will be, I think, the ultimate compilation, and then I can go about my business. I may throw one in about astrology. I may throw in an extra title. I'm making compilation now, demonology, folk medicine, and so forth. By the way, those 2 are really popular. I never expected folk medicine had so many legs in the literary world. I guess it partially could be the pandemic. But if the internet, which is the counterpart to that, if let's say you have censoring on the internet, it's digital book burning, it's arguably even worse. Because, of course, you can hide the physical book, but it's harder to hide data. It's interesting because it's actually harder to hide something that's more abstract. Especially, if it's in another country or something, maybe it can manage to preserve itself. This is why I make physical paperbacks, by the way. It endangers the ability of a person's mind to have original thoughts if they're not able to absorb openly all possible thoughts to derive it from. As your thoughts, like your personality, everything you do, is partially influenced and derived from foreign sources. Your upbringing, your parents, your friends, books you read, TV shows you watch. You incorporate little bits of this all the time, sometimes without realizing it, I would argue, most of the time. If, therefore, a power artificially limits what you're taking in, it can artificially limit what comes out. And so if you want the occult as a study of truth, as a general overarching study of everythingness, of reality itself in a broader philosophical sense, and you have censorship by a corporation or a state or something, it doesn't work. It is intrinsically evil, I would say, on an ethical and moral basis. It's never for benevolent means. And another thing, most occult forms are meant to be empowering. Either empowering the individual as sort of a godlike being or spiritual entity, or enlightening the individual, ascending their consciousness, or maybe subjugating them, but it's to a higher power. Insofar as all of these systems are, generally speaking, meant to empower, the idea of a foreign entity outside of that spiritual teaching, your church, your book, whatever, preventing you from doing so is very degrading. It's also, historically speaking, it's hard to be an occultist without understanding basic history as well. Just trust me. You'll learn a lot. If you're doing what I'm doing, you'll learn an awful lot about the linguistic usage of Old English and shit like that. You'll learn an awful lot about historical medicine and stuff. history shows us that censorship is always a bad idea and causes mass killings and pogroms and superstition and so forth. It's funny, people think of the occult, they think of superstitions from a very Christian background too. It's funny how much ideology about it in Western cinema and literature, fiction literature, comes from like Hollywood adaptation style stuff from Salem, from the Burning Times. And it's superstition. It was wrong. It was always wrong to begin with. It's always wrong now. Now we look at it maybe in a more academic sense, but that was what people believed at the time. And essentially the occultists of the day, and then the wise woman dispensing abortion herbs and shit, people with a basic understanding of chemistry and stuff that were routinely rounded up and killed, or people who were philosophical dissidents to the establishment at the time, wink wink nudge nudge, those people that were burned at the stake or drowned in a river somewhere, that were genuinely, in that sense at least, if not meaning to be magical or meaning to do sorcery, which they typically weren't, but they were the ones with knowledge. These people were seen as traveling around at night on brooms and killing babies and drinking their blood and suckling demons and weird shit like that, and it was always wrong. It was ignorance. We see it today. You can probably figure out a few examples of literally right now on the very website you're watching this, regardless, by the way, of which one you're watching it on. You can see some examples of basically a neo-Burning Times now. I would argue, therefore, it's in the interest of all occultists to oppose censorship and authoritarianism whenever possible. If people are capable, and this goes into my belief in evolution, which I think is ironclad, if you believe that good tends to be preserved and what doesn't work tends to be destroyed over time, slowly or quickly, then you have no reason to believe in censorship, because the right ideas, at least for the moment, in the subjective sense or in a more absolute sense, will be more accepted, and the shitty views will tend to become less accepted over time. Yeah. So yeah, just a little bit of a rant on the idea of free speech and so forth as it encounters the spiritual. That's about all. Peace out.